Hey everyone, it's time for another edition of Beaver Banter.
Beaver Sports Talk lives here.
It is the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner. That's Ian Rivers. Ian, always a great day to be a Beaver. And like we were talking a little bit before we started recording, a Frozen Four coming up this weekend. And we kind of, in the midst of all the March Madness and transfer portal and a whole bunch of news, you almost kind of forget that the Frozen Four is this weekend.
Yeah. I've always found it a little strange how it's like a 2-week gap in between it just kind of kills the momentum, like for a casual fan. Like, unless your team is physically playing in the Frozen Four, it's really hard to like stay engaged. Now, maybe I'm just not a big enough college hockey.
Maybe I'm just still salty enough about Bemidji State not getting in. Maybe, whatever.
Could be, but there's definitely a little disconnect.
Exactly. In case some of you are forgetting, Denver and Western Michigan are playing on Thursday, and that will be at 4:00 puck drop. And then following that will be Penn State and Boston University. Of course, the Frozen Four is in St. Louis this year. Kind of judging on stuff, who's kind of been the favorite throughout the Frozen Four teams is kind of like the one that people are expecting to do something when they get here.
Well, it's interesting because I think that you could spin it any number of ways. I think Western Michigan is probably like the odds-on favorite just because they come in as like the highest seed, I believe. Boston University is a good team, but they kind of were playing like trash before the tournament started. And then, I mean, they played two not great games and won and just kind of ended up in the Frozen Four. And they have a decent matchup against Penn State, who is on paper a lower seed, but is probably one of the hottest teams in college hockey. And then you have Denver, who just doesn't lose ever in this situation. Like, you feel stupid in a situation like this year where you're like, oh yeah, I mean, Boston College is just so good. Like, they're probably going to go through to the Frozen Four. And it's like, no, every time you bet against Denver, they're going to make you look like an idiot. At least in the last couple of years anyways. So yeah, they're back. I think it's their third Frozen Four in the last 4 years.
Defending national champions.
Champions. It's going to be a good
camp enjoyers this year.
Yeah. Eric Polkamp is living the dream out there in Denver. So
if you're a Bemidji State rooting interest and you're a big Polkamp fan, I guess that's the team, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you're still salty about it, you're a Western Michigan fan. I don't know.
Right.
That's kind of the biggest thing with that. So any other Frozen Four things before we I know we're just going to kind of briefly touch on some of the college hockey news and notes and stuff that pertains to Bemidji State, but anything, again, this is a Bemidji State podcast, not a Frozen Four podcast, but just to kind of get anything out there since of course it is the big weekend.
I wish I would have been more public with a bracket because I think that I would have picked Penn State in the Frozen Four. Like, I watched them a considerable amount, like at the end of the year. I knew they were red hot, and like I kind of like to get a little bit goofier, I should say, with my bracket picks. So I would have been I should have leaned into it a little bit harder, my Penn State agenda, because it would have paid off this year. And every time I actually do lean into it, I'm made to look like a fool. And when I don't actually come out and say it, then it's like, oh yeah, of course. Yep. I'm sure you had Penn State locked.
Sure you did.
Before, buddy. So yeah, that's really the only notes that I had. I know there's a lot of talk going around about how, the Big Ten, and I know that Penn State is like the team that ruined college hockey by getting a program and getting the Big Ten interested in getting their own, conference. But at the end of the day, I was pulling for them this year, at least because they were red hot, kind of had a slim chance to make an at-large berth, and then got red hot, got into the tournament and made some noise while they're there. 4 seed with a considerable home attendance being played in Allentown, Pennsylvania. That's, that's a subject for another time though too. So, there's a lot of issues right now in college hockey, but I'm sure that that's the difficult part. Is last year everybody was talking about the regionals, that was kind of the main hot button issue, and now there's so much that's evolved that it's almost like, man, that's the least of our concerns right now, is getting campus sites for tournament games.
Right, exactly. It's been a little interesting with the college hockey landscape and with the NCAA tournament. Again, Denver, Western Michigan, 4:00 on Thursday, and then following that, a 7:30 puck drop for Penn State and Boston U later that day. Again, in St. Louis, whatever the heck the Blues Arena is that, I don't know, doesn't matter. That's where they're playing it. So that's where things sit. Ian, let's go across college hockey and kind of Bemidji State related storylines. What are we kind of looking at here across the collegiate hockey space?
Well, we have a couple of news pieces that dropped today involving men and women's hockey. Men's team, I don't believe that it actually has dropped yet. It's just kind of an insider source that we've got that's telling us that the men are about to get a commitment from a player from Merrimack College, Van Uhas, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Probably, he's a 90-foot player from what I have gathered in our Discord, which, by the way, good plug. If you want to learn a lot of this stuff early, join the Discord, because we get, scoops in there. This, I don't believe, has been announced yet as we're recording this, but it sounds like it's getting ready to happen out of the transfer portal. So that's good. We're going to be losing some bodies, so we need to get some more bodies in. I can't complain about it. And then on the women's side, the women got a commitment from Carmen Bray, who is a left-hand defenseman from St. Cloud State. So a decent pickup there as well to help bolster the women's hockey program, who has lost a few players to the transfer portal, but not as many as years past, which is good, because you want to keep building that rapport with players and coach as you build the program out, basically from the bottom of the conference, and hopefully keep going up with that. So a couple of portal pickups for the Bemidji State teams. Nobody on the men's side to report since we last talked. Reese Chittenden, I believe, is still the only one who has made a splash into the portal, which of course
is kind of
it's still open
a little bit, because they had a lot of graduating older players. So there's not a reason for a lot of the younger players to jump ship, because theoretically there's a lot of ice time that's going to be kind of left up, right? Is that the going theory?
Yes. And there is a lot of good players coming in, however, and we still had we had a lot of forwards this year, regardless of the fact that we're going to be losing. I don't actually have the amount off the top of my head, 5, maybe 6 forwards this year that we lost, between all the fifth years and Dante Lawson. So yeah, there's definitely room to be made, but we did have 4 or 5 healthy scratches on the forward lines every night. So you plan on playing some of these guys you're getting from the CHL, that still leaves a lot of those guys, and Chittenden in particular, if he's still going to be a guy that's kind of going in and out of the lineup every weekend as a junior, that's probably not what he wants to spend his time doing. So I haven't heard anything. I don't know if he has found a landing spot yet, but I'm sure that we'll know whenever he does end up somewhere.
Right, exactly. Also too, I think it should be made kind of on the transfer portal, or not transfer portal, but just on some of the stuff we talked about last week. I know we spent a lot of time trying to get into legal talks about the rulings and opting in and the settlements with the NCAA. And there was something that Jared Rubedo again put out on Twitter last night. Again, he's the sports editor over at the Bemidji Pioneer. He's in the Discord. So again, just another reason to go follow that and to follow him on X and Facebook, or whatever platforms he's using to go follow him there. But he has he posted this. He said, some clarification on Bemidji State's status. BSU has not indicated whether it will opt in or out of the settlement, and it doesn't have to. The NCAA encourages school announcements, but they are not required. He said he'll have more on BSU's decision later this spring. So he'll have some information. Of course, yeah, like you said, the university does not have to go public with this. And this is on the NCAA news, having a statement on the settlement hearing, where it said today's hearing on the landmark settlement was a significant step in modernizing college sports. If approved, the settlement will allow student athletes the opportunity to receive nearly 50% of athletic department revenue in a sustainable and fair system for years to come. That was from Charlie Baker, president of the NCAA. And then that's when Jared replied with the statement. But kind of like what we talked about last week, we just kind of don't really know. And, whether the school will announce it, I have no inside source or nothing really to report on. Just kind of on a gut level, it feels like maybe we'll know come the spring, but part of me feels like if there's no reason for the university to tell the public, I wonder if they will.
I feel like just knowing kind of how Bemidji State's operated in the past with some of these things, probably not. We probably won't find out about it. If I had to tell you one or the other, that would be my guess.
We'll find out through Jared. Like the university won't announce it, but Jared will kind of like drop some nuggets of information that will lead you to believe one way or the other. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And again, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm not saying that as a what are they hiding? What are they doing? It's just they're under like injuries. We talk about it with the college hockey season all the time. Sarah Torrey is under no obligation. Bolte is under no obligation. Coach Stoltenberg, they're under no obligation to tell us injury updates if they don't feel like they want to tell us. That is one of the benefits they get, and the university is just opting to do that. Now, I would just say in the interest of just us being able to talk about it and kind of get more information on what's going on with the program, it would be nice. And it's not to say that they're not going to do it, but maybe they're still deciding. Maybe there are some things they need to go through. I'm not sure what's all going in on those deliberations. Again, Jared is the one who's sounds like kind of doing that work, and we'll put that out when he kind of has a chance to really hammer out some details. But yeah, it's just going to be, again, not to rehash this entire argument because we had it last week and it was just long and we're no legal experts, but just again, kind of this saga playing out a little bit, and with not a ton of news going around across campus, like this kind of just will keep lingering up until there's some kind of closure.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to know, and I'm sure like once somebody knows, then everybody will know. But like I said, and really the only thing I have to go off, and I don't even know if this is connected at all, but like all these years that the fifth year players have had to come back, we haven't known. Like some schools will put out announcements that their fifth year players is returning for their fifth season. Like Bemidji State, we kind of found out who was coming back during like captain announcements and stuff like that. It's like, right. Oh, I guess Loft is coming back next year. It wasn't the actual.
It's not a formal announcement. It's just kind of like you have to read the backhanded way of what they're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be a captain this year. It's like, I thought he was a senior last year. I guess he's eligible. He was eligible. I guess he's utilizing that. So yeah, that's really the only thing I have to go off of is just based off of that. That's best guess, but I don't know. It's obviously a different issue altogether. Right. So
that being said, we could have this whole conversation, and then Jared in the Discord would be like, "Guys, what are you talking about? This is what's happening," which could very well happen, and he'd be right to call us out. And then in which case we'd tell you, and then in which case we'd say this is another good reason you should be on the Discord. So
absolutely.
So there you go. Anything else college hockey related that we need to get out there kind of on things going on? I know we missed a couple announcements last week on the show that most of you know about by now, but we should just also mention Fulmer signing to play for Orlando of the ECHL, and then Matthias Scholl, of course, inking a professional contract in the ECHL with Greenville. Just again, a couple of those moves that we didn't get a chance to formally talk about on the program. I know they happened a few weeks ago now, but congratulations to both of them, and kind of just a fast start to that professional career, and wish them nothing but the best, because again, they were, especially in the case of Scholl, just fun players to watch in a Beaver uniform.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't get the chance to formally say that. I listened back to the episode with Jared. We did bring up the fact that Scholl was in Greenville, but it wasn't like an official announcement.
It just kind of was like in
congratulations passing, or anything, So yeah, good for those guys. It's always fun to see Beavers hitting the pros no matter what level it's at. And honestly, I think it sounds like Yuri is going to play pro in Finland. I don't know if there's been
That would make sense.
an announcement on that or not. That's just kind of what I've heard through the grapevine. So we'll have to dig a little deeper on that and see if that's going to come true or not. But
And again, just another reason to be on the Discord, and you're kind of in on some of that grapevine. So
yes,
Discord.
yes, exactly.
So yeah, that's about it. Any other college hockey notes, Ian?
No, I don't have any.
No, it's kind of that slow period. Again, Frozen 4 will have some stuff, but overall, it's just we're kind of waiting for some things to happen. In the meantime, though, we will talk a little BSU spring sports because it kind of feels like eventually some games are going to get played here in Bemidji. Now, last week we talked about the fact that there probably wasn't going to be any games in Bemidji for softball, and if they were, it was going to be on the football field. Well, with some of that late snow last week, that didn't end up happening, but the sites got reversed. So Bemidji State went down to Winona last weekend on Saturday. They got swept in that doubleheader. They lost 6-3 and 8-0 in 5 innings in that second game. And then on Sunday, they played Mankato and got swept 2-1 in the first game. And then that second game, the Mavs put the brakes on, and then they won 11-3 in that matchup. Now, Bemidji State does have some games as of recording this podcast tomorrow. They have a doubleheader at the Chet against Crookston. So the BSU softball field is not quite ready yet, but they will play it at Chet Anderson Stadium and try and get a couple games in there as they try and get their a conference season going. It's been tough for the Beaver softball team since we last talked. Obviously, they've lost 4 in a row. That brings their record now down to 15-23. They are 2-12 in the NSIC. And by the way, it's been a 5-game losing streak because last week when we talked last, they beat St. Cloud. But then in that second game, they lost 9-1 in 5 innings. So it's been a little bit of tough sledding here for the softball team, mainly just in the case of they just haven't really been able to get the bats going. Since that 8-run game against St. Cloud State, they've scored 1-3, 0, 1, and 3 in all of those games. And in softball specifically, you're going to need to score a lot of runs if you want to compete, especially in the NSIC. So it's just, yeah, and again, there's probably some pitching things to be taken care of here and there. But if you're looking at one area that's got to improve, I mean, it's just got to be the offense. And I get it. It's colder weather. You're dealing with stuff. You're doing a lot of road trip down to Winona and then Mankato. That's not an easy drive from Bemidji. All that stuff and the weather. And obviously last weekend with weather wasn't necessarily great. But that all being said, the offense does need to kind of get things going a little bit here and try and help get this team in the right direction.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see after such a promising start in the non-conference schedule. And there's still time definitely to turn this around and make some more noise. But yeah, the bats have not been connecting as well as I think they've wanted to. And unfortunately, it hasn't resulted in many wins. But decent chance coming up against Crookston tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow, where they will, play a doubleheader. And Crookston right above you in the standings at 2-10 in the conference. So a good chance, pick up some wins, maybe get a sweep over Crookston tomorrow and vault yourself back up a little ways and then, get some momentum, because it's a confidence thing sometimes. I don't know if that's the thing in this case. I'm not obviously in the do they call it dugout, like in softball still?
Yes, they do.
Well, technically, it's not dug out. It's just kind of a bench there.
It's just a bench. Some places, I guess it is. You got to try and flip that around any way you can.
Well, and I think I was trying not to second guess myself because I know like sometimes I try to call it the mound in softball too, where it's like it's obviously not circle. A mound. So I was trying not to trying not to conflate the two. They're so similar and yet so different. It's so different, exactly.
It can be, trust me, as somebody who is going to have to do softball and baseball broadcasts here at the end of the week, kind of on back-to-back days, it is all of a sudden you're like, yeah, from the circle, and you're like, oh, never mind, that is a pitcher's mound. Nope, that is not correct. Looking at Bemidji State overall, with the softball team, in terms of amount of games played, they are towards the bottom of the conference. Obviously, because of weather, they've only played 38 games this season. The only teams that have played less in the conference have been Wayne, Minot, and Northern State. They've played the exact same amount of games as a USF. And then the leader of the pack, ironically, in games played has been MSU Moorhead with 43 games played already this season. Now, Bemidji State is going to have a couple here in the middle of the week that should kind of bump them back up. But so obviously this might be a little bit conflating when you look at hits, but currently Bemidji State right now is, in terms of runs scored, are in the conference. As I try and get my sortable thing here, in the conference, Bemidji State ranks 11th with 150 runs scored throughout the season. They currently have a team batting average of 269, which is 12th. Their overall number of hits put them at 11th. The amount of, again, just with the team in the runs that they've been able to score via the home run, Bemidji State only has 4 on the season. And again, it's just a little bit of that it's not that things have been going really bad, but they just haven't been able to really get things together. And this is a team where we feel like, hey, they maybe have a chance to try and get something going. Again, you're playing Crookston. Maybe this is a chance to kind of get a couple wins and get some things rolling here throughout the standings. Because as we look now at how the standings shake out in the NSIC, which again, it feels like, what are you talking about? Like, didn't the softball season just begin? Kind of, and not really, because at the end of the month, we're talking playoffs. April 27th is the final game of the season. And as of recording this, there are less than 20 days to go until the regular season is done. Currently, Bemidji State is tied for second to last in the conference. Northern State is 2-14. They are officially the worst. Bemidji State is 2-12. Minnesota Crookston is 2-10. Mary is also 2-12. But so if you're Bemidji State, you have a good opportunity on your home field to get some wins. It's imperative that they sweep this doubleheader in the middle of the week.
Yeah, I think so. If you want to make up ground and make up ground quickly and get some momentum, get those bats moving, and then you go into the next game, a doubleheader against Wayne State, I believe, who is in the middle of the pack right now in the NSIC. Yeah, I agree. I think it's imperative, like you said, to pick up a couple of wins here and really, really try to get that momentum back that you had, a couple of weeks ago before conference play started. Yeah.
Moving things along here in our other sports, let's talk a little BSU baseball over the course of the last week. And things again for the baseball team, they were able to pick up a win. And they were able to do it a convincing 11-4 victory on the start of a series against Sioux Falls at the Birdcage. But then they lost the next 3 in that series, 10-2, 1-0, and 16-6. They also had some losses over last weekend that we talked about, but that was the only series they'd played, was that weekend 4-game set against Sioux Falls with 2 doubleheaders. They went 1-3 in that stretch. Now, they had some good offense in that first game, but unable to really get the bats going, scoring 8 runs the rest of the 3 games. Now they're going to face another tough conference opponent. They got Duluth coming up on Thursday, a doubleheader at the BSU baseball field. It feels like, and again, knocking profusely on wood here, that game is going to happen in Bemidji, just based on how the weather kind of ends up looking. And then on Saturday and Sunday, they got 4 games set, a doubleheader on Saturday and a doubleheader on Sunday against Mankato, which is going to be it's going to be a tough one, be honest. So that's going to be that'll be just something to keep an eye on for the baseball team.
Yeah. The good news for them is that they have matched their season win total for last season with quite a few games left to go above that. Granted, it was a pretty low bar for last season, but hey, you don't want to get worse. So that is a very good thing. At the very least, we can walk away saying they didn't get worse, but hopefully they can pick up another couple wins. Is that 2 series in a row, CJ, that they've picked up a win?
Yes,
yeah, it
I
is.
believe so.
it sounds a little bleak to be sitting here hoping for 1-3 in every series. But if they can do that majority of the way, that's a big step up from where they've been over the last couple of years. So good for them getting another win. And hopefully the bats keep rolling if we can get those to be a little bit more consistent. Because like you said, 6 runs isn't necessarily terrible in that last loss, but they gave up 16. So that's definitely not going to help.
That's definitely not
many
gonna
games either. But yeah.
Taking a look at the NSIC, Northern State is 1-19. They are last in the conference. Then it's Bemidji State at 2-18, Minot at 7-13, Minnesota Duluth and UMary at 9-11. At the top of the conference, it's Minnesota State, who is 19-1. So we'll kind of monitor that as the thing goes along. Ian, kind of looking at the men's golf right now. Again, we mentioned a little bit last week on the show, just kind of talking a little bit that they were in the Tiger Classic. That was wrapping up. They ended up finishing 12th out of 18 in that one at the Fort Hays Tiger Classic in Hays, Kansas at the Smoky Hill Country Club. They then competed over the weekend in the Upper Iowa Invite, where they ended up finishing on day 2. They were second of 12. So not quite the result you wanted at the end of last week, but at the beginning of last week, but at the end of the week, things ended up finishing pretty well.
Yeah, that was a pretty good round there in Waterloo. Second out of 12, I'll take that. It's not a win, but it's damn close. So
right,
yeah.
Much better than finishing 12th out of 18.
Yeah, exactly.
So they have a match play on Tuesday afternoon, the 15th of April in Kansas City at the Oakwood Country Club for Rockhurst, who's hosting that one. And then it's on to the NSIC Championships at the end of next week, kind of in that early Easter weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at Blue Springs, Missouri for the NSIC Men's Golf Championships. So here we go. The golf season's kind of coming in pretty furious here towards the end, at least on the men's golf side.
Yeah, speaking of men's golf, I met a future Bemidji State men's golfer this week. I was just at the gym the other night, and he approached me. I was wearing this very hat, the Bemidji State hat, and he asked if I went to Bemidji State. So I got to plug our podcast a little bit, meet a future athlete. That
there
was
we
kind of
go.
Cool. Love it.
You didn't get an interview?
No, I felt like it was but I know him. I know his name now. So when I see his name pop up on the roster card next year, I'll have to send him some sort of message and say, "Hey, now that you're finally on campus, maybe
we go.
Maybe you want to come on the podcast." But I figured I'd let him be for the time being.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably for the best. Looking over on the women's side of things, they are right now competing as of recording in the Augustana Spring Invitational at Elmwood Golf Course in Sioux Falls. No results have showed up here for that one. And then at the beginning of next week, they play in the Wayne State Wildcat Classic at the Wayne Country Club. And then the weekend after, April 25th through the 27th in Smithville, Missouri, is going to be the NSIC tournament for the women. So again, things just keep rolling here on the golf scene. And as we kind of go through with that, Ian, anything with tennis that we need to know about as we're kind of wrapping up our spring sports roundup here?
Yeah, tennis was in action. Women's golf, by the way. Yeah, I was trying to look for some live stats, but apparently this tournament is not using Scoreboard Live. So we'll find out whenever they post
when it's all done
statistics at the end. It's unfortunate for golf that we record on Tuesday afternoons. I think if we either recorded on Tuesday evenings or Wednesdays, we would know the results. But for now, we'll have to wait until next week to at least tell you about it. So if you're interested in that, just keep your eyes posted on the BSU website. I'm sure they'll be uploaded any day now. But yeah, women's tennis up to 7-7 overall, 3-4 in the conference. They had a couple of matches over the weekend, Friday and Saturday. They played Minnesota State and Winona State at the Gillette Wellness Center. They lost 2-5, unfortunately, to Minnesota State on Friday, and then took a 4-3 victory over Winona State to jump up to, I think 3-4, like I said, in the conference now. Only 2 matches left in NSIC play, and those are coming up, I believe, not this weekend, but next weekend. It'll be the 18th and the 19th. So we can talk a little bit more about those, I guess, next week. But yeah, only 2 weekends left, or 2 games left, 1 weekend of women's tennis. So I'm not sure how the tournament is formatted. I do see it now on the website, on the schedule. NSIC tournament. It would be the following weekend after that, April 25th and 27th, or through 27th. So I'm assuming, I don't know if they play like quarterfinals or what, but
yeah, I'm not sure how that shakes out.
I would have to, that's something I can do for next week, is do a little bit more research on how the tournament is formatted and then see where Bemidji State sits and if they're going to make that, because right now they sit 5th place in the conference at 3-4. Granted, there is a logjam there of 3-4 and 3-5 teams, 3 3-4 teams and a 3-5 team. So looking at the schedule, their last 2 games in NSIC play are against Moorhead and Mary. And Mary is currently 4-3 right now. So that would be a team that you would be looking to jump by beating. And Moorhead is one of those teams that is at 3-4 right there next to you. So 2 very important matches coming up in a couple of weeks for the tennis program. But hey, they're 7-7. That's rolling for the tennis program. So I'm going to be rooting for them over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we can get them into the conference tournament.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, 7 wins right now. This is the most wins they've had since 2022 when they went 8-6. They went 5-6 in the conference that year. So they have a chance to do something that a BSU women's tennis team hasn't done in quite a long time. And again, just really good for that program to be able to see a little bit of success this year. Because again, those 8 wins back in 2022, that was a welcome sight, because before then, the last time they've gotten to 7 wins was the 2020 team that finished the campaign 7-7. Of course, that season didn't quite get to finish in full fruition. That they got to their 7th win around this I shouldn't say around this time. They got it around February 28th, and then never got to play kind of the rest of that season out. But yeah, so that's kind of where things are looking at for BSU women's tennis here as they try and finish the season strong. Ian, I think that pretty much does it for our spring sports wrap-up. Is there anything else we need to talk about? Because we have one last thing that we're going to do before we finish the show, and I think we're kind of pretty excited to get to do it.
I was just going to say, like, I think we brought it up off air last week, or maybe it was on air even, how weird, like, I was trying to look at that because I noted in my head, like, this is like one of the best seasons in recent memory that I can remember for the women's tennis team. And you go and look at the BSU webpage and you're like, oh, 2022, they got 8 wins. And then you go to the NSIC standings.
Era, so
you go to the NSIC standings on the webpage, and it says in 2022, Bemidji State went 5-7 overall. And so I'm like, this doesn't make it. Which one of these is wrong? I don't remember.
What is happening?
Like, I don't remember or recall like a very good, like 8-win season for the tennis team.
Right.
But I got to be honest, I don't track them as hard as I track other Bemidji State sports. So maybe I was missing that.
I trust what's on the website. So like,
right.
Yeah,
I do trust the BSU webpage a little bit more. I think they have like less reason to get it wrong, but then again, like, you'd think that the conference website would be right. So I don't know.
Right.
I'm gonna go with 8 wins because it's better. So we're gonna go with that one.
Yes, exactly. That's just what we're going to roll with. One more thing before we finish up today's show. Ian, we've kind of talked about this concept and we've talked about doing it a while now. And I think today is maybe the day to bring it out. So we are doing a segment about BSU's biggest rivals. And we are doing this in kind of a snake order draft, I guess. We haven't really decided who gets the number 1 overall pick, but we can, I guess, coin flip that or something. I don't know. But either way, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we each get 3 picks, and we need to figure out who are Bemidji State's 3 biggest rivals. Now, for example, if I had the number 1 overall pick and I pick like Minnesota State, Ian has to pick some other team. We kind of have to assemble a team of Bemidji State's biggest rivals. We have to give a little bit of a rationale. Let's kind of do a little bit of a let's do a bit of a coin flip here, Ian.
Well, I was thinking, I'm a little bit bigger hockey guy. Maybe because we're going to do 2 of these. I don't know. I
Yes.
can't remember if you specify that. We're going to do a total college hockey one, and then
Yes.
we're going to do just NSIC rivals.
Yes.
So do you want me to take the number 1 pick for the
Yes,
college
take
hockey
the number
one,
one
and then
pick
you
in the
can take
hockey one. Yeah, that's
you can
probably the
take
way to do it.
NSIC?
Yes.
And do you want to snake it, or do you want to just do like back and forth?
Well, let's snake it. Why not?
All right. Why not? So to lead off the college hockey one, if we want to start with that,
Dun 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 dun.
It's-
Dun dun dun.
it's Minnesota State, dude. I
I mean,
don't
it's
think
just
that there's
gotta
a
be.
bigger rival. It's I can't think of anybody else. Like, I dislike Tech a little bit more because I think most of their fans are a little bit more like conceited. But like, man, if you're talking about just the rivalry that these 2 schools have, and it goes deeper, right? Because of the fact that these are NSIC rivals as well. Spoiler
And
alert,
it's just
they're
an
going to be on
in-state
that.
rival. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's in-state. Like, we play them a lot in hockey. We play them a lot in football. We play them a lot in soccer and basketball and everything else. It just builds up, right? And like, they made the D1 jump at a similar time. You know, like, everything lines up for these schools, especially over the last like 7-8 years since the first time Bemidji State won the McNaughton Cup till now. Like, there's been big games between these 2 teams. You know, this year alone, they had a couple of big games earlier in the season when you kind of thought that Bemidji State was still going to be in the running for the McNaughton Cup, and then things hit the fan. But they played in the playoffs this year. They played last year in a series that really decided who got to hoist the McNaughton Cup. They play in these huge spots. The Mason Cup championship game from 2021 that we have to talk about at least 14 times every season.
Why?
Yeah, it's awful, but it's number 1, and it's Minnesota State. I don't think that you're going to hear too much pushback about that for the biggest college hockey rival.
Yeah, I think, and again, because we're kind of we're going through the snake, so I'll kind of get my picks back to back here. So it's a little unfair on my end, but I'm going to go in order, and here's my order. I'm going to go with the second pick. I'm going to go Michigan Tech, but it's only because they're in conference.
That's who I had.
Because, and like you said, they just play a lot of meaningful games. Unfortunately, as much as we have to bring up the Mason Cup Championship in 2022, we got to bring up the 2024 Mason Cup Championship where they had home ice against Tech and they lost. And
I said 2021 earlier. It was
the 2021 season. Yeah, we know what you mean. We know what you mean. But yeah, it's I mean, we got to bring that up, and their fans like to they like to talk, they like to chirp. Like you said, conceited is probably the right word. They do a lot of talking for a team that doesn't really do anything if they ever get to the tournament, whereas at least Bemidji State can win a game if they get in there. Same with Mankato, that at least can get in there. Like, it's a good hockey program, don't get me wrong, but yeah, there's just a little bit of like there's a little bit of fun with those 2 programs, and when they go back and forth, and those 2 teams always seem to be playing big games against each other as well. It feels like the biggest series every single year in the CCHA is when they play Mankato or Michigan Tech, which is why I got to go there. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I put them at 2, and I think it was very clearly just because the amount of meaningful games you play against them is way more than anybody else that I had on my list, you know, from 3 through 6. It just, yeah, conference tournament games, conference games, like you play them most of the time 2 times a season instead of just like once a season. And then for some of the other schools on here, it's like not even every season you play them. So it definitely, that's who I had at number 2. And I think the gap between 2 and 3 was pretty considerable for me as well.
Yeah. So with the number 3 pick, I'm going Alabama Huntsville. No, just kidding.
Oh,
nah, just kidding. No, with the 3rd pick, I think I have to go. And like you said, there's a few rivalries that you don't play every year that maybe you do, maybe you don't. And for that fact is why I'm going with North Dakota, because you do play them almost every year. It's a close rivalry geographically, like it is where it is. And even though obviously North Dakota doesn't hold this rivalry probably as high in regard as Bemidji State fans do, but also like this is Bemidji State every year. This is like, hey, if you could, like, I hate to bring it up, but they beat North Dakota at at the Sanford Center, and they almost beat them in the Ralph. And we thought, like, okay, here we go. This is going to be a nice team this year. Like, you track how well you do against them. And it kind of sets the bellwether for your season. And yeah, you play the Gophers and typically, and you play some other schools where that does it too, but there is a rivalry there, just considering that both teams are in kind of that central to western part of kind of the Minnesota and North Dakota cluster that all these schools are in. I think it just has to be North Dakota because you just play them so much more than you play some of the other out of conference rivals.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. That's who I had at number 3, just because I agree with you. I think it's a little bit one way. And unfortunately for Bemidji State, I think that that's kind of, other than Mankato and Tech, like, I think that that's a lot of these. Like, a lot of these
Right.
NCHC schools don't really think about us at all. Like, unfortunately, it
It's
sucks because I wish there was,
like, I feel bad for you. And they're like, I don't think about you at all. Like,
it's like, God, like, I want other teams to hate us. Like, I want us to get to that level of program that other teams do hate us. But I had North Dakota at 3 as well, just because we want to beat them so bad. And this was the second time ever this season, that we beat them in the, season series. So it's definitely always fun games. That's usually when the barn is the most rocking, outside of, the occasional semifinal or conference championship game at the Sanford Center. North Dakota was my number 3 pick as well.
We're not really disagreeing here, but I think it's pretty. It's like, I'm not gonna pick one just to be controversial. Like, no, like that's
this is kind of where I think it gets a little bit harder. You're splitting hairs between like where these two ended up. So my number 4. And the tiebreaker has just been how long we've been playing them, according to as opposed to number 5. So number 4 for me is Minnesota Duluth. Again, it's the Highway 2 rivalry. I think that there has been some years where this really hasn't held the shine, like where Duluth has kind of been a powerhouse program, and now they're kind of falling back down to earth. But it feels like we're never really on the same page with one another, or there's a year where we won't play them. It definitely does feel like it's a little bit dialed back, but I think you still have the NSIC part of this as well that helps, because you hate them because of the other sports you play them in.
You also have the old WCHA kind of stuff factoring in. Yeah,
exactly. That too. But honestly, that could be said about any of the other 3 teams that we've talked about as well, because I believe Michigan Tech even was in the old WCHA. I could be
towards the end. Yeah, I think
towards the end. But yeah, Duluth, just how close you are. It's always usually a home and home series, even though this year is a weird split between when you play the games. And given the NSIC teeth you have with that team as well, I think that always makes it a little bit better of a series.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, as somebody who's lived in both Bemidji and Duluth for a couple of years of my life each, that's a rivalry for me. And here's the interesting part. Yeah, it's hard to tell because the program's never quite in a similar spot where it's like they're both going at it like iron versus iron. Now, when Bemidji State had some of those really good teams that COVID kind of wiped out, well, they didn't get to play him in the 2021 season. That was mainly a conference season. And like, you didn't get to really do a ton of stuff. And UMD had a nice team that year as well. I believe, was that Frozen Four? Was that the year, trying to think, when Bemidji State beat Wisconsin? Was that the year? Because it was Mankato was in the Frozen Four. Was it UMD and the Gophers? Who am I?
No, Mankato beat the Gophers to get to the Frozen Four. It was Duluth and St. Cloud. So it was an all Minnesota Frozen Four. Besides our region, we lost to UMass, and then UMass ended up winning the national title. Duluth made the Frozen Four because Michigan got COVID and couldn't play their first round game. And then they played in that 5 overtime game that went until like 1:30 in the morning against North Dakota and won. And all the North Dakota fans were pissed off because they didn't have to play a game like North Dakota did against, I believe it was AIC the game before.
When has the team ever lost to AIC in the first round of the tournament, though? I mean, really?
Never. I don't think it's ever happened before, actually.
I mean, if it did, they might as well just contract their program.
Yeah. Exactly.
But anyway, I remember that working at the TV station in Duluth at the time. Like it was It was insane. It was super insane. So yeah, I gotta say UMD. Yeah, it does make sense. Like you said, you're splitting hairs. So who's your other pick?
At number 5, I have St. Thomas. And again, it's kind of a split
Ooh,
hairs thing
yeah.
because we have played some big games. Like it's a little bit one-sided in a way. But I think if St. Thomas were to stay in the CCHA, these games would kind of even out. Like their program is here now. Like they're not going
They're
to
getting the barn. They're getting like they're building up to be a D1. Yeah.
Yep. And so I think, last season we played a pretty big series with them towards the end of the year where things were pretty electric. Like that game was one of my favorites, the jutting overtime winner, in St. Thomas at the St. Thomas Ice Arena. Like the crowd's getting into it. Our players are chirping the student section. The student section's flipping off our players when they score goals. Like that's what you see in a rivalry. And it's a shame that St. Thomas is jumping ship and going to the NCHC because I do think that would be a really good rivalry. Secondary probably to Mankato. And I think Mankato would probably consider them a bigger rival just because they're closer in proximity.
And let's not forget, Mankato wanted that NCHC bid and they were giving it like that was anointing for St. Thomas because like they were just going to get it because they're in the Twin Cities and Mankato geographically does nothing for the NCHC.
Yeah. The reason I had St. Thomas down so low is just because they've only been a program for 4 years. And we really haven't seen it build into what I think it could be eventually someday.
And like you said, they're leaving to go to the NCHC. So it's like it's kind of has a chance to die before it really gets to build. That being said, they'll still probably play them a lot just because of travel and budget and all that kind of stuff. It's not like they're never going to play St. Thomas, but yeah, like the conference implications and some of that other stuff. Doesn't really get to happen yet, which is unfortunate. So, but yeah, no, I think, maybe do you go St. Cloud State in that direction? Maybe do you go like in Augustana, but that one's still too young to really kind of bubble up. This is kind of a tough one to really end the draft on because there's a few different ways that you could go. You could say the Gophers because it's always like a bellwether, like, like how well you play against them kind of determines how good your season's going to be. But, the Gophers just don't consider. We're like you're just like, oh, that's cute. Like that's kind of the vibe from Gopher fans about Bemidji State, despite the fact that Bemidji State beat them in the Sanford Center and gave them a scare on their home ice. Anyway, but that's beside the point. Which would make me say I feel like I have to end this with St. Cloud State because just again, you're kind of in that same tier. I think there's also like the Saratory connections and things like that, and just other things in the college hockey realm with the connections to St. Cloud State and some of the other things that just kind of all in that same tier. And again, the drive from Bemidji to St. Cloud isn't short, but out of all of the rivals, like again, going out west, we already talked about North Dakota. Going out east, we already talked about Duluth. But if you're going south, the closest one is St. Cloud. Like, it's not unrealistic to make a drive if you live in Bemidji to go down and watch a game in St. Cloud and go back home. It's not like the end of the world. It's, what is it? Probably like a 3-hour drive to St. Cloud. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, somewhere around there.
Not an unbearable trip from Bemidji to St. Cloud. So, and yeah, I feel like that is a rivalry as well. For the Beavers, I feel like that's got to be the one to close it out. Is there any kind of objections you have? Do you think Ferris State cracks this list? Does Northern Michigan? Does Lake State? It's got to be just the Minnesota schools. And
I had St. Cloud State at 6 as well. And honestly, I think if you give me a couple years, Augustana is easily
Augustana's going to get there, but not right now.
They're just too new. 2 years in.
What a good start to the rivalry by knocking them out.
Yeah, great start to the rivalry. They had a pretty good series. They split technically, only 2 points, but they split the series and then they go to 3 games in a playoff series. As this grows and evolves, and like you said, they're in the NSIC as well. So that's definitely going to be one of those that can rocket itself up into the top 3 or 4 of this conversation within the next 4 to 5 years for sure, but I think it's just too new at this point. Ferris State might be even like the next honorable mention just because of how many times they just
bite us. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, I have no other notes, and we do have another bracket still to get to here. Or
Yeah.
list.
Well, we can put. Why don't we push that to next week?
You want to?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's not hold ourselves short here because we only got about 10 minutes.
I think that's going to be a more
that's a much
questionable
more
debate
fascinating
still.
one.
Like,
Yeah.
college hockey stinks. Like, we kind of had to open it up to all of college hockey because it's like if you get down to 6, it's like, yeah, Lake Superior State is the 6th biggest rival probably because who else would be
Right.
like in the CCHA? You know, like,
but like
there's
I don't.
not a whole lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. And like I don't look at Lake State and go, I hate those guys. Like,
screw them, dude. We gotta beat them. Like, we hate them. You know,
it's like I just kind of
Green,
feel like
you know,
I
like-
need to beat them because we just need to beat them. Like if you lose to Lake State or if you have a series where you get swept by Northern Michigan, you're like, like that's not a good.
Yeah, we
The
did
vibes
both of
aren't
those
good.
things this year.
Oh darn. But yeah, so that's kind of where like maybe you could swap UMD, maybe you could swap St. Cloud somewhere in there. Maybe you could put the Gophers in on the list at all. But and I think that'd be defensible. Is there any? I mean, there really isn't any other non Minnesota school, non CCHA school that really kind of fits into this category. There really wasn't any big rivalries with Anchorage or Fairbanks. Those mainly were just go there and survive when they were in the old WCHA, the old, but not the old WCHA, if that makes it. Back in the last iteration of it. I mean, Alabama Huntsville was always just kind of a doormat. Like there really wasn't much to look at. Bowling Green, like it's a tough place to play. And nobody wants to go to Ohio, but like,
that one's hurt by the fact that I feel like we only ever play them like once a year. Like this year, of course, we played them twice, but like more often than not, it's like Bowling Green that we only draw once a year, which I feel like doesn't help that. Like, so yeah, I think it's a pretty solid list. Like we said, there's 3 names that are probably in everybody's mind that are left off that probably aren't going to get argued, and it's Minnesota, Augustana, and Ferris State. Like, other than that, like. Bemidji State just doesn't play a variety of like out of conference games,
right.
Maybe you could say Wisconsin is top 10 just because they've played them twice within the last 5 years, but they really don't switch it up.
They've played 2 different coaching staffs when they've played Wisconsin too, which maybe you could add because of, obviously because of the MSU connection to Wisconsin. But still, like it's
maybe
not,
with the Saratory connection there as well.
Yep.
And we did play them, God, that's got to be pushing 7-8 years ago at this point. I remember they came to the Sanford Center. But yeah, it's a small list, and that's why I think it's a little bit less interesting. There's 15 teams in the NSIC that we'll talk about next week. So yeah, if you're excited for that conversation, be sure to listen next week as well. But yeah, let us know in any comment section or in the Discord if you're listening to this, if you're in the Discord, what you think of our list, if you change anything. We'll run back through it. At 1, we took Mankato. At 2, it was Michigan Tech. 3 was North Dakota. 4 was Minnesota Duluth. 5 was St. Thomas. And 6 was St. Cloud. That is actually the exact list that I had. And obviously some of that is because I picked half of the list. But I don't think that we would have strayed.
The other half kind of just falls into place.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a pretty spot on list. There's really only 2 of them that I really consider like a true rival from the fact that it's like, all right, these guys are coming to town. We don't like them and they don't like us. Like, yeah, North Dakota. I think if we got to a point where we were, this is the hardest part is you don't know where college hockey is going to be like 5 years from now, let alone like, you don't know. But if we were in a point where, we were consistently getting these types of results against North Dakota, absolutely. I think they would start to dislike us a little bit more, but
well, and right now they're just too busy feeling bad for themselves because Brad Berry, was Brad Berry. So that
they're mad that they've only won 5 Penrose championships within the last 10 years. They have other things to worry about other than the Beavers, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I'd love to. I mean, look, their lives are already bad. They have to live in Grand Forks, so like they got their own set of issues to deal with.
I'll be up there this coming weekend.
I'm sorry.
As some of you may know, I have a sister that for some reason chose to attend school up there. So I will be up there because it's her birthday on Friday. So I know you
Ian's
probably don't
mainly,
listen to this, but Happy birthday, sis, if you listen.
He's mainly just going to go up there and just start like defacing monuments and at the Ralph and stuff like that, and just start like doing damage to the arena.
Yeah.
And by that, I just mean like he's going to just like throw a snowball against the wall or something.
Yes.
Don't listen to this, Grand Forks PD. You didn't hear anything. All right. No. That's probably our time to get out of here before we implicate Ian on something else. I'm CJ Baumgartner. That's Ian Rivers. This has been Beaver Banter. We'll catch